Hello, everyone. Just letting you know that we are here and excited to present Social Media Customer Care, the battle for ownership. We're going to pause until about 1 to 2 minutes after, and then we'll go ahead and start our webinar. So if you'll please just hold, we'll be right there. So once again, welcome everyone. We're just giving a couple extra minutes to log in, but we are here and we'll be ready to go in about 30 seconds. Hello, everyone. My name is Kirsten Jepson, and I will be the coordinator for this webinar. First of all, welcome. Today's webinar, which promises to be very lively, is titled Social Media Customer Care, the Battle for Ownership. Before we get started, I'd like to provide a bit of housekeeping. If you wish to submit a question, there's a box on the corner of your screen, and I'll collect those questions as we go through the course of the webinar, and we will ask those at the end during a Q&A. A link will be available on BrightTalk shortly after the end of the session, so you can get a recording of the entire webinar there. And also, our slides will be posted on SlideShare. So let's get started. I'd like to first introduce today's experts. Our interviewer today is Nick Sellers, who leads the creation and communication of Sykes solutions for global technology companies. With more than 28 years of experience in management, business improvement, and solution development across a number of outsourcing disciplines, his innovative support and engagement programs have been deployed by leading global companies. Nick is a resident of Scotland in the UK and is an enthusiastic consumer advocate working with clients to improve the customer experience. And he will be interviewing Sarah Grace McCandless, who carries over a decade of experience in consumer marketing. She has extensive work in digital and social media strategy, including community management and customer care support. As a director of global product management, digital solutions for Sykes, Sarah Grace manages the SM Edge social media consumer care solution. Prior to joining Sykes, she developed programs for a large number of global and national companies, including Nike, Microsoft, Animal Planet, Discovery Communications, NBC Universal, Bravo, and FX. So I'm excited to introduce our presenters. On to you.
Thanks very much, Kirsten. Appreciate the introductions. So Sarah Grace, let's get our first question over. The title of our session mentions battle for ownership of social media. Who are the warring parties and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the warring parties are marketing and customer service. So why? Well, when social media first started, most companies really positioned the ownership of that under marketing, PR, communications, and whatnot. That made sense at the time. Really, social was focused on outbound content, outbound marketing, outbound messaging. So as such, as it stands right now, these same marketing departments very likely have a strong say, if not full control of social, or they might be the final decision maker. Budgets and tools for social care support also might currently live underneath marketing. and customer service may or may not be involved. Now, what's changed since social first started is the need for involvement, because customer service, their need to be in this space has changed dramatically.
So why is that? Why is social so important for customer service?
Well, there seems to be a new report coming out every week. Sometimes it feels like daily, certainly weekly and monthly, about the different trends and growth in social media in terms of consumer behavior. If you think about today's consumer and their ability to have 24/7 access to their social channels, it's in their hands through their smartphones, not to mention on their laptops and tablets and whatnot. And as such, it's becoming a growing destination to reach out for help and support. So these are just a few of the facts and figures that have come out in recent reports, but 2/3 of the social media messages out in the internet today have to do something with customer service. And on top of that, the expectations from consumers is really growing. As you can see here in this recent research, 60% of consumers who reach out to companies through social media expect a response within 60 minutes or less, so within the same hour. And then also, if you think about where's this going, well, a recent Gartner report predicted that 90% of customer service is going to be done via social media. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to continue to come through voice or through chat as well. But what the numbers are telling us is a story. The story is this. Customer service related conversation and queries are going up and up and up. And these customers are not asking or posting or sharing their experiences with no expectations in mind. They expect to be heard and responded to quickly and accurately.
Okay, so the numbers that you've got there are really substantial. I mean, there's no doubt that we're in double digits and high double digits at that. But I'm a marketing guy. Why couldn't I just have my team respond to that? Because, we have the team, we have the ownership of the platform and probably the budget as well. Why couldn't we just do it?
Well, I think this falls into two areas. One is, what are the objectives on social when you think of marketing versus customer service, and then thinking of areas of expertise. So if we think about what would customer services objectives be on social, they're really focused on the customer experience, and that's going to include productivity. How did you listen? Did you get back to me? How quickly did you get back to me? How long did it take to resolve the query I posted through social? Is there a quality to the response that was provided? So quality assurance. And am I providing an answer that is satisfactory to the customer? Was it resolved in a fair way? Did I get what I wanted? Or was there at least an attempt made? Now, marketing, internal or in tandem with an external agency partner, tends to be more focused on brand when it comes to social. So that includes brand awareness. Do you know we exist? Do you know that we're out there? Brand sentiment. Do you like us? Do you dislike us as a whole? Content engagement. Did you like or connect with what we pushed out there, what we published? Did it resonate with you in some way? And then brand advocacy. Are you likely to tell others, whether that's on social media or in person, face-to-face, how much you like our products and our brand? So tasking marketing with managing customer service really means putting something on their plate that isn't necessarily, one, an area of true expertise, two, a responsibility of their core role and focus, and three, a top priority as well.
So social's kind of brought the need for marketing and customer service to work together closely, I guess. But is there a common objective that they both have?
I think there is, and I think we can agree that the one common goal that they both are trying to achieve is really driving revenue for their respective businesses. So, and that's an interesting thing to think about. If you look at, how does customer service, though, impact that revenue? Well, it directly impacts it, because good customer service can really drive increased spending habits. If you look at another recent report, it talked about 74% of consumers have spent more due to good customer service. That's pretty staggering. That's a pretty impactful number there. On the flip side of that, another report looked at annual revenue loss due to poor customer service. And this is across multiple industries. We're talking in the tens of billions per year that companies are losing directly as a result of their customer becoming, going from becoming an advocate to just becoming completely alienated from their company and their brand.
Okay, so these are pretty big numbers again, but the numbers that you're quoting here are not specific to social media, are they? These are substantial numbers and large and have to be taken account of.
Absolutely. So, this includes social media, but it's not just in social media, but it's definitely a part of it.
Okay, so how do you think that they go about now working together? What would be the way in which social media can be the catalyst, or can be the channel that brings marketing and customer service together to work together?
That's a great question. And, if you think about it, if you go back to what we just talked about, so we talked about the key differences in terms of social objectives, whether you're thinking about customer service or marketing. And, at first glance, they may seem like two very different tracks. But one big shared objective here, again, is driving revenue. And on top of that, the reality is this: if a customer service is successfully achieving their specific key objectives through social, so what you see on the left side here, check mark, check mark, check mark, if they're hitting all of these marks, those efforts are going to directly impact marketing's ability to do the same. So hitting one set of key objectives is going to, in turn, help the other department hit their own key objectives. Success on one side leads to success within the other. And that's the reality. They seem different at first glance, but ultimately they are now feeding into each other, because you really can't have a successful marketing program if your customer base is very alienated by poor customer service. And if you're providing great customer service, it's going to directly drive that brand affinity, that brand advocacy, and that true organic desire to engage and speak on behalf of your brand.
So I guess a question that's just literally come to mind for me just now would be, I guess marketing and customer service are in the same boat, hopefully, pulling on the oars and rowing in the same direction. What kind of conversations do you think should really take place between marketing and customer service executives to just kind of really get things lined up and get those oars kind of, aligned and being pulled in sync?
That's a great question. I think there's a few things that you need to consider when you're thinking about trying to mutually have shared custody of these social channels, right? So the first thing is, where are you on social? Having that collaborative discussion between customer service and marketing. Marketing may have a very predominant need to be on a channel such as Instagram, for example, or even Snapchat. Customer service support through those channels, that may not be the destination where customers organically go. They may go to Twitter or Facebook Messenger for Business for their customer service support. Now, that doesn't mean the company shouldn't be on Instagram. You just need to think through what are the channels where each organization, each department needs to be. And then thinking through things too, a trend you see out there is sometimes there's multiple channels for a particular company or brand, and one is very specifically dedicated just to support. So is that something that makes sense for your particular industry, the size of your company? So first and foremost, where to be and why. And just because there's a social platform out there doesn't mean you need to be on it, but you should be considering, new and emerging platforms as well. I think,
oh,
go ahead.
No, carry on. Sorry, I cut across. Keep going.
I was just going to say on the same note, technology is also really important. If you're not on a shared platform that helps you cohesively manage those channels, you are pretty much asking for trouble, because you are running the risk of, well, first of all, it's going to directly impact your ROI. So there's a lot of really great technologies and tools out there to help you manage your social media. And you can do that with multiple departments on the same dashboard, on the same platform. And doing so is going to help you be more efficient in your social media publishing and your engagement and response. It's also going to help you circumvent doubling up on efforts, having two different departments tackle the same question. Because sometimes, you'll have a comment come through in social that may be part marketing and part customer service. So you're going to need to determine who's going to take lead on what and who's going to answer accordingly. And having a technology where you can volley those conversations behind closed doors and get it to the right person and right department to answer is crucial for a successful program.
Right. So I have two questions for you. And I'll ask the second one first, so you can maybe kind of consider. In terms of examples, are there any companies or sectors that you would kind of hold up as the ones who are, maybe getting it right? So that's the second question first, and maybe you could consider that. The first question, maybe more of a statement, it sounds as though what you're advocating here is that rather than there being a battle going on between marketing and customer service for participation or ownership of social media, it sounds as though what you're saying is that these two parties are actually kind of fighting side by side in the battlefield, but not against each other. They're actually kind of just standing side by side and actually taking what needs to be done out to social.
Absolutely. I think that, there doesn't need to be a battle. There's room for everybody at the table, and there should be a seat for everyone at the table. And with respect to, again, each other's, core objectives and then thinking things through, there might be, for example, a great marketing campaign, and maybe there's a hashtag around that, right? But thinking through, are there any repercussions from a customer service side where, it might backfire? So thinking through all of those things proactively. I mean, the fact of the matter is social is a public space. So you have to put your best foot forward. It's a permanent space for the most part. And if you're collaborating together and putting your best foot forward for both departments' needs and objectives, ultimately you're going to come out much more successful than those departments who are still trying to basically have the keys to the car and not share it with anyone else.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. And then in terms of, industries who are doing a good job, so it's a real mixed bag. I think it depends on the maturity of your overall social media program. Your marketing efforts might be quite mature. You may just be getting into the customer care space in terms of how to support that. But one industry I would say that's doing a really good job or a very interesting job is travel and hospitality. If you look at airlines and hotels, car rental, anything like that has to do with travel or hospitality, you're dealing with a consumer who probably has a very real-time need. They may be en route or in flight, and they need your help right now, or they may be looking for a promotion that's more from a marketing side to help, facilitate their travel and save a few dollars. So it's a really interesting consumer base to look at. There's some progressive work being done by a number of companies that fall underneath that umbrella.
Right, and thinking back to that earlier slide with the big number, the percentages, the 3 percentages side by side, it sounds as though if the hospitality and travel industry is kind of doing well, presumably those statistics were like averaging things out. So if one is doing well and maybe is above that benchmark, then there are others that really have got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, there are, and that's not to say there's not, some companies underneath travel that need to kind of get up to speed. I think what I will note for travel, we talked about expectation for response, and the 60% or more of consumers are expecting that response within an hour. If you look at travel, those timelines are much more aggressive, and we're talking about a 15-minute window or less. And that's also something you're seeing in the telecommunications industry as well from that consumer base. The expectations are leaner, and I think that's an industry that's interesting to look at in terms of cohesiveness on marketing and customer care support, and really a priority in terms of a place that needs to be really working together seamlessly. And part of that is prioritizing the volume, the queries that are coming in, because there's a lot of noise in social too, and you have to decide what's important, what gets handled first. I think if you think of it like an emergency room, somebody might come in with Right? Maybe there's a head cold and they couldn't get into their doctor, but they need to be treated. So they decided to go to the ER. But they're probably sitting in that waiting room with some injuries that are a little bit more life-threatening, so to speak, if we're using this analogy. So of course you're going to attend to those customers or patients first. It's kind of the same thing in social. You've got to build a prioritization level, category levels. What's a level 1? Everything can't be a level 1, and it shouldn't be, but you have to decide that for what's particular to your industry.
But it strikes me that the level of urgency could well be different sector by sector. You know, travel, you know, people may be already in transit and are tweeting and need something back within 15 minutes. It might be that, you know, for the sake of the enjoyment, somebody that's in video, somebody that's a video gamer would be looking for a response in minutes rather than hours. But I could see that maybe there'd be other sectors where the need for 15 minutes isn't quite so prevalent, and it could be that the speed of response there could acceptably be several hours.
Absolutely. I think if you just think of the consumer and what they're trying to consume, right, and the urgency or the passion base behind it. So if you think about entertainment, you think about travel, if you interrupt the access to those items, you are creating a very anxious and hostile customer who's used to having that all the time. Now, if you're, you know, talking about maybe a retailer and you might have ordered something and you had a 4 to 7 day shipping window and you're checking on the status of that 4 to 7 day shipping window, it's not as urgent. That 15-minute reply time doesn't really apply. So there will be variances. And I would say that's something else to consider too, is don't go out of the gate with, you know, 24/7 support in terms of your social media. If your customer isn't expecting it and you don't quite have the resources there, you can build to that. So you need to kind of think through what is the consumer expecting and what's reasonable, and then lay that as your framework, and then build and expand your hours accordingly. I mean, social is very 24/7, but you don't necessarily need to start there. It might end up overwhelming you, and you might want to build to that scope.
Absolutely. Okay, so we, you know, back onto the kind of the battleground idea that we started with, marketing and customer service. Do you see that actually social media customer support can be used by marketing as a key differentiator? Because marketing really is around, you know, how your brand is bigger, better, you know, more suitable for the consumer. So with that in mind, can customer support be used? Social media customer support be used as a differentiator?
I definitely think so. I think there's a lot of data that's out there in social, and you know, numbers are just numbers unless you know how to analyze them and translate them into a story and into an actionable insight. But if you have the right, you know, analyst team there to do so, you can take a lot of that data from social, and it will inform your marketing team on a number of fronts. One is, you know, how did a campaign resonate with a consumer? Is there feedback on a product that could be fed not just back into marketing in terms of how they position their future marketing around product rollouts, but maybe even back to research and development and product development, and how they're creating offerings for the consumer and what technologies they're providing or features or, you know, things like that. You can really glean a lot of that information from the feedback you're getting from your customer on social. So I think there's a lot of insights there, and it's really important to have that built into any program, looking at reporting and data analysis. How are you measuring your efforts, and what is the data telling you, and then how are you optimizing your programs accordingly?
Right, great. Okay, I'm kind of done with questions for the time being. I'd like to maybe give the audience a chance to ask questions and get you to answer them, Sarah Grace. So Kirsten, are there any questions coming in that we can lay out there before Sarah Grace?
There are some questions that have come in. So the first question is it better for a company to be specific in responses with associate names or as an overall group? I'm seeing more and more individualized signatures in responses to customer issues. That's a great question. Personalization in social media community management. You are definitely seeing this in a number of places. It varies too. Sometimes it's initial, sometimes it's a first name and a last initial. I think what that does is it makes it, one thing we think about with social is we don't want to sound like robots,
on social media, right? We want to sound like, even though we know it's a digital platform that we're communicating through, that it's a person talking to a person. If you're texting or IMing a family member or a friend, you feel that personalization. So I think the companies that are really putting that personalization in their responses are trying to kind of facilitate that connection. I think, again, it really relies on the industry. Something like travel, probably want to feel a little bit more personal, like I know you. You know, you may not need that personalization with other types of industries, but it's definitely an interesting area to explore, and I would recommend be consistent if you do so. The caveat, the con to that is then it's sort of, you know, well, I talked to Sarah on Twitter, and she said, you know, and it gives somebody a point of contact if they're not pleased with the solution, although Sarah could be many people. But I think that, again, the ultimate goal there is to remind them you are talking to a person, and we're listening, and we care about your problem.
Right, and I think that's the thing, isn't it, about social media? That whilst the channel is a very publicly available channel, the conversations that take place, unless they're in, you know, direct messaging where it's one-to-one, actually it's still two people kind of interacting, but with others overhearing or looking on. So, you know, it is still a personal thing.
And we have another question. What platform is better for support, Twitter or Facebook, and why? Well, I think right now, both offer a lot of great functionality. And I'll tell you, with Facebook, I think Facebook Messenger for Business has really changed the game a bit, because it's a way to have social conversation and dialogue, but in a much more private manner. So it's very akin to direct message on Twitter. Twitter is great for one-on-one, back and forth, before Facebook Messenger really kind of came into the game. Twitter, I think, is also, and Facebook are great for what I would call proactive broadcast messaging. So let's say you have a pervasive problem, you're getting 500 questions on Twitter about the same thing. You can proactively craft a message and send that outbound to circumvent some of those queries that are coming in. You can do the same thing on Facebook. I think the thing that's tricky with Facebook is most people interact with Facebook through their news feed, and what gets served up organically in there depends on a number of factors with their algorithms. But again, Facebook Messenger for Business, I think, has changed the game, and I think more and more companies are adopting it. Again, a lot of people in the travel industry, financial services, it's great because you can exchange information in a much more secure way. So I think you're seeing a stronger one-on-one argument in Facebook as a result of Messenger, and it's very reflective of consumer behaviors. You know, messaging apps, texting, instant messaging, that's something that is growing, you know, more and more popular. So I think it was smart to focus for Facebook. And I think we have time for one more question. Compared to call center KPIs like AHT, NPS, and so on, what are some specific KPIs that we should be measuring to determine success in the social world?
That's a great question, because there isn't really a unified standard in the marketplace quite yet, but there are some things that I think you should consider. And Nick, I certainly would love to hear your point of view on this as well. But I would say, first and foremost, is looking at the overall volume that's coming in directly through your channel. So direct mentions, meaning a consumer is going to your page or tagging your handle or hashtagging your company name or brand to try to directly speak to you. So let's start there. And looking at the overall volume, and from that direct mention volume, how much of it is truly actionable, meaning it does warrant a response? Because there's a lot of noise out there, and some of it doesn't need to be responded to, nor should it be. And then once you have it drilled down to that actionable direct mention volume, looking at things like, what is your average response time? What was the inbound sentiment, and how has sentiment changed month to month in terms of your consumer? What are the topic drivers? So those are some things I think that are important to consider from a measuring standpoint and a performance standpoint. The other side of that is indirect mentions, where a consumer may be talking about you but didn't tag your company page or handle. Doesn't mean they don't want to talk to you. They may just not have known how to. So that is something I think it would be interesting and important for companies to put some efforts behind, is listening to those indirect mentions, putting some context around them, and deciding how much of those are actionable as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can really add anything to that. I do think that different channels of customer support do merit having different metrics, and one of the pitfalls, one of the obstacles I think often that companies face is that they try and apply the same metrics to different channels, and it doesn't always work so well. So I think the question is a very good one. I do have a kind of another question for you, Sarah Grace, and it's maybe not one that you want to answer just now, but just for the sake of challenge. I think measuring customer satisfaction in social media can be a challenge. I think, with voice and email and even chat, there are surveys that can be done, but in the social world, I'm not sure that really works so well. So how could customer satisfaction be measured in a social sense?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, you could certainly try to execute surveys through social, but it just doesn't work exactly the same way as you would through another support channel. I mean, I think what you can do is you can start with a benchmark of measuring where's your overall sentiment across social channels as you start or restart your program, and having something to measure as a benchmark, and then watching how that sentiment changes week to week, month to month. What are the drivers behind that sentiment? Because that sentiment is probably a large driving factor there is going to be the overall customer sentiment, the customer experience. People are going to get more vocal if they're unhappy. People tend to run to social more when they're unhappy than when they're happy. So that's something to consider too, is people like to complain, but don't always remember their pleases and thank yous on social. So even though they're not saying it on social, doesn't mean that the sentiment isn't out there. But it would be interesting to take a look at, your drivers and the differences between channels too. You may have a very sort of positive community on Twitter, and it may be a different story on Facebook.
Yep. Good. Thank you. Okay, Kirsten, over to you. Anything else coming in?
That is it for now. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. As I mentioned, the link will be available out on BrightTalk and the slides on SlideShare. So thanks for attending Social Media Customer Care, the Battle for Ownership. And thank you, Sarah Grace and Nick, for presenting for us today.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining. Thank you.
Bye-bye.